Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vana Chari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Nu Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So Prakash, you know what the day is today? Prakash? Do you know what day it is today? Besides being Sunday? You want to say it in the mic?
So today we have a few appearance days. Sri Madhavendra Puri's appearance day, Sri Parameshwari Dasa Thakura's disappearance, Sri Radha Raman Devji appearance, Srinivasa Acharyas appearance, Krishna Pula Dola and Shalila Vihara. It's a festival, Leela. Yeah.
Water festival?
Yes. It's Krishna's pastime. One of Krishna's pastime.
All right. Nice. So we could discuss some of these devotees. So we'll start with Madhavendra Puri, Sri Madhavendra Puri. Before Lord Chaitanya appeared, he sent his eternal associates like Sri Advaita Acharya, Sri Jagannath Misha, Shachimata, Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri to earth. Sri Madhavendra Puri took initiation from Sri Lakshmipati Tirtha in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya. He had many, but Sri Advaita Acharya and Sri Ishwar Puri were the chief disciples of Madhavendra Puri. In one way or another, all the Vaishnavas in Bengal and Chaitra Mandala, Jagannath Puri, were connected with Sri Madhavendra Puri. After Lord Chaitanya came, many of his disciples joined Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. So this is from Vrindavana Das Thakur, a quote. Madhavendra Puri's body was completely full of divine love, so were his followers. He displayed uncommon love of God. Seeing a dark blue rain cloud, he would fall down unconscious. Day and night he was intoxicated from drinking the ambrosia of Krishna Prem. So, in illusion, when people Om Gyanativedandasya Gananjana Shalaka Chakshulan Militam Yanatasma Shri Govindadeva Pakam Karitavachalam Pangam Langate Girim Yakipadamaham Bande Shri Govindadeva Pancha Kaplavishcha Kipasanjaya Vacha Padisanamba Nibya Vaishnava Bhyaramana Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Brahmanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So an illusion, when people see things or hear things or whatever, somehow their senses are in contact with this world in this way or that way. The mind also being a sense. Things, you could say, do not remind them of Krishna. Do not remind them of God. Do not remind them of do not remind them of spiritual life. And that's you could say the challenge, because modern civilization, they are promoting the materialistic way of life, and the materialistic way of life means that it doesn't have anything to do with God, doesn't have anything to do with the goal of life, the ultimate goal of life. And therefore, subjecting our consciousness to such things, it just helps us forget Krishna. Because it's not automatic that one will remember Krishna, but one has to, if they're not on the platform of spontaneous attraction to Krishna, then it's not automatic, you could say. It doesn't naturally occur. Of course, when one becomes more and more advanced and on a spontaneous level, then they will remember Krishna. Everything will remind them of Krishna. Just like Srila Prabhupada said about it, when a devotee sees a tree, they think, oh, well, this is, right, Krishna's energy. This is coming from Krishna. Everything's coming from Krishna. So everything should remind a devotee of Krishna, actually. Or as Prabhupada gives the example of a mother. A mother sees the child's shoe, and she doesn't think, oh, this is just a shoe, what's the big deal, and just a shoe, but she says, this is my child's shoe. So similarly, we see things in relation to Krishna. We should see things in relation to Krishna, which for somebody who is conditioned by material nature, it's very difficult, because the idea is we see things separate from Krishna. That's the problem, right? That's the whole problem. We see everything separate from Krishna. Like Srila Prabhupada says, he was saying, talking to his male disciples, that when a young, or any woman, when she comes to the temple, we shouldn't think, oh, now let me exploit her. But we should think, oh, let me try to... We should see her as not separate from Krishna, as part and parcel of Krishna, as Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say, as Krishna's gopis, right? And you try to help them. Now that doesn't mean you become like, pen pals with them, or because you say, I'm just trying to help her, right? The brahmachari says, I'm just trying to help her. But, the butter and fire principle. So, the point is not to see her in an exploitative way, but in the mood of service, within reason. So that's the idea. We want to see everything, everyone, every circumstance we encounter. We want to see it as not separated from Krishna. And this is what Madhavendra Puri, Sri Madhavendra Puri, was doing. He didn't just say, oh, here's a rain cloud. He saw, this is a dark blue rain cloud. This reminds me of Krishna. And then what happened? It said he would fall down unconscious. He would fall down unconscious. It's just seeing a rain cloud, because it reminds him of Krishna. Fall down unconscious. So that's a extremely high and great example of somebody who has a spontaneous attraction. They're not trying. He wasn't like trying to remember Krishna, just automatically. Krishna just, he was always in his consciousness, but this heightened his experience, his transcendental experience. So, and that means that he has spontaneous attraction or affection or love for Krishna. So we also have to be like that, become like that. Just like for a man who's attached to a woman, it's not that he has to try to think about her, or she has to try to think about him. They just naturally think about each other, because they're spontaneously attracted. Of course, that's a very crude and but our Acharyas sometimes give us examples. As Rupa Goswami, he has this very beautiful shloka in the Padyavali, the Sri Padyavali. Well, I don't think it's Rupa Goswami, but he compiled the Padyavali, Sri Padyavali. And one of them was, let me become so attracted to your deity form, just as a groom is attracted to seeing the bride on the wedding day. Like, okay, afterwards, maybe fast forward the fast forward their lives a little bit. They get sick of looking at each other. Or, they want to look at somebody else. But on that wedding day, it's a fact. They're just absorbed in each other. They're loving to look at each other. Whatever. It's just, don't take it so seriously. But someone told me there's some a man and woman are getting married and they're looking at each other, and sometimes the ceremony's kind of long, especially the South Indian ceremonies. I remember somebody got married here, South Indian wedding, Paneshwari's daughter, I think. It was long. It was like hours. They're chanting mantras and yagyas, and I think someone said that the wedding was so long, you don't want to get a divorce because you don't want to go through the whole process again, something like that. Of course, there's no divorces in Vedic culture, but when Krishna was joking with Rukmini, he was saying, like we were discussing the other day, oh yeah, you could just, Rukmini had grandchildren at that time with Krishna, and Krishna said, yeah, you could just divorce me, it's okay, you could. That's what Prabhupada mentions the word divorce in Krishna book. Yeah, it's okay. And she was just, her heart was pumping, her heart was, beating, and her mind, then she just started crying and fell unconscious because divorce, there's no divorce in Vedic civilization, so. But yeah, like in a wedding ceremony, and again, don't take it so seriously, but a wedding ceremony, the bride and husband, they're looking at each other and very absorbed and spontaneously attracted. And one person was telling me, and everybody else in the audience, they're thinking, okay, when's lunch going to come, Anyways. But they're spontaneously attracted to each other. So so in this particular verse, he says, let me become so attracted to seeing your deity form. And then he says, just as a woman and a man, they want to very enthusiastic about you could say kissing each other, right? Kissing each other's lips. So let me become so attached, so enthusiastic about taking prasadam, food offered to you. And just as when a lover gets a love letter from their beloved and they're reading it out loud, let me become so attracted to the message, your messages, the Bhagavatam, the holy name. Let me become so attentive that I read it in such a way. So you have prasadam, and you have seeing, and you have hearing. So yeah, we should become attracted. And these examples are given because everybody practically has had such experience or have some idea of what's being talked about here. So this is Sri Madhavendra Puri. He was on the highest level, and he was just seen a rain cloud and fell unconscious. After making an extensive pilgrimage of Bharat Bhumi, he passed his life in Vrindavana and Orissa. He began the restoration work of Vrindavana that Sri Rupa and Sanatana Goswami continued later. Wandering from grove to grove and remembering Radha Krishna's sweet Vrindavan pastimes, Madhavendra Puri would faint in ecstasy. In a dream, Sri Gopal ordered Madhavendra Puri to uncover a buried Gopal deity and install him atop Govardhan Hill. Madhavendra Puri celebrated Gopal's installation with an anukut. You know what that is, soul? Yeah? What is it? Anukut. Means a grand festival offering of a mountain of food. Anukut means a mountain of food. Whoops. A mountain of food. Here's the saffron elements of standard to wear saffron if you're interested. This is the temple's the things you have to do to wear saffron. I'm using it as a bookmark, but. So Anukut, a mountain of food. So this Gopal deity was on top of Govardhan Hill, and then they offered a big mountain of boga. We do this on Govardhan Puja. This Anukut festival, also called Govardhan Puja, is one of the most important Vaishnava festivals in Vrindavan, in India and around the world. The original Gopal deity, known as Sri Nathji, is now worshipped in Nathdwar, Rajasthan. Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of Madhurya Bhava, conjugal love, in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya. Madhavendra Puri sowed the seed of Prema Bhakti, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became the towering tree, dropping honey sweet fruits of prema upon everyone. He also revealed Viraha Bhav, the mood of love relished in separation from God. His branch of the Madhva sect distinguished itself by this ecstatic love of God. It is known as the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. In Jagannath Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed an intense mood of this Viraha Bhav. This increased unlimitedly when the Lord heard verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, Krishna Karnamrita Gita Govinda, Padyavali, and the love poems of Chandidas and Vidyapati. Mahaprabhu's Viraha begins with a single verse spoken by Madhavendra Puri, his grand preceptor. So this is from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhyalila, chapter 4, text 197. Aidina dayadrana tehe mathura nata kadavalokise hridayam tvad aloka kataram Deity brahmyati kim karotyaham. O compassionate Lord of the poor and humble, O Lord of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Without seeing you, my heart has become very much afflicted. O my beloved, I am overwhelmed. What shall I do now? So they say that there's only 3 persons who understood this. Who are those 3 persons? Srimati Radharani and Madhavendra Puri and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is, Srimati Radharani feeling separation from Krishna. And this particular verse was spoken towards the end of Sri Madhavendra Puri's life. He was there on his disappearance bed, and he was being served by Ishvara Puri and Ramchandra Puri. And somehow or other, Ramchandra Puri, he became critical. He became offensive towards his guru, Madhavendra Puri. And to the degree that when he heard this verse, Aidina Dayadranatahe, it's because it's a lamentation. He's lamenting, oh, when will I see you again? And then Ramchandra Puri, he said, oh, Gurudev, why are you lamenting? This is mundane. In essence, that's what he was saying. This is mundane. Why are you lamenting? In the Bhagavad Gita, he was saying to Madhavendra Puri, it says you shouldn't lament. Nashochati, nakangshati. This is material. No hankering, no lamenting. And then at that particular point, it says that this Ramchandra Puri had some Mayavadi leaning, means impersonal conceptions and convictions. So at that point, Madhavendra Puri said, get out, you sinful rascal. And he said, if I die seeing your face, I'm not sure where I'm going to go, so just leave immediately. So then he left. And then, but he had the opposite example of Ishvara Puri. Ishvara Puri was very humbly serving his guru. Says that he was, because in old age and disease, you can't move, right, so well, and said he was cleaning up his stool and urine with his own hand. And it said that because of this, and helping him to remember Krishna, I mean, of course, Madhavendra Puri, but he was assisting him in his hearing and chanting about Krishna in his last days. So because of this, Ishwara Puri was awarded love of God, was awarded love for Krishna by this humble service. And because Ramchandra became critical, he became offensive, he became as we say in ISKCON, a fault finder. I don't know if they say that anywhere else. Oh, they do? It's an actual saying. Maybe it's a saying from the 1800s or something. Okay, fault finder. Okay, so they do. It is a term. So he became a professional fault finder, and after that, it says his heart became very hard, and material desires entered his heart, and he became a criticizer of all Vaishnavas, including Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramchandra Puri went to Jagannath Puri, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a strict sannyasi, he came to teach us how to be a sannyasi. And practically, I mean, he's very strict sannyasi. So he was in his dwelling place, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he lived, and there was some ants crawling. And then Ramchandra Puri, who is the godbrother of his spiritual master. So it says one should respect the godbrother of the spiritual master as one would respect the spiritual master. So Mahaprabhu was very humble with him and very submissive and in a service mood with Ramchandra Puri, although he was so critical. So then there's this famous painting in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the devotees painted, PBT painting, of Ramchandra Puri, and he's kind of squatting down and he looks very angry and his face is all like wrinkled and like this super bitter sannyasi, and he's like pointing down at the ground at all the ants. And then Lord Chaitanya's there, and his eyes are kind of big, and he's looking very scared a little bit, you know. And Ramchandra Puri is pointing down and criticizing Lord Chaitanya. There's ants here. This means you must be eating sweets, and you're a sannyasi. You're not supposed to eat sweets. And just like, so then it says Lord Chaitanya cut his eating in half. And then all the devotees in Puri were just so disturbed because, you know, they want to see Lord Chaitanya pleased and comforted and satisfied as far as possible. So he cut his eating in half, and it was just very difficult for the devotees. And then, but it's explained in the commentary that ants are everywhere. I mean, it wasn't Lord Chaitanya was stashing sweets or something. It was just, he was just being a criticizer, Ramchandra. And it says that this Ramchandra Puri was so offensive that he would actually create circumstances in which he could offend the devotees or criticize. Like he would invite them all to lunch, and they'd all sit down, and he would serve them, and then he would keep on serving them, and more and more and more and more, and they would, you know, take a lot of prasadam. And then Ramchandra Puri would criticize them and just said, "Just see, I heard that the followers of Lord Chaitanya take too much prasadam, but now I know. I've seen it with my own eyes." Although he was the one pushing him to do that. So, anyways, on a bit of a derail to a degree, but His Holiness Giriraj Swami and Indriyamna Swami were in South Africa one time. They used to spend a lot of time over there, and not so much these days. But anyway, so there was devotees serving them lunch. And then, I think I've said this before because I spoke on Madhavendra Puri a number of times here somehow. I get but they were there at somebody's house. Maybe some devotees haven't heard, but and devotees just kept on bringing out preparations, different preparations. different types of rice, sabji, sweets, just, and they didn't know how much was in the kitchen. The devotees just kept on bringing stuff out. So then, Giraj Swami told Indrajumna Swami, Maharaj, what are we supposed to do? Because I don't know how much is in there, and I don't know how much they're going to keep on bringing out, and I'm getting full. But I don't want to offend them. What are we supposed to do? And then Indrajumna Swami said, well, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, one who's a yogi, they should not eat too much or eat too little. So he said, today we're focusing on not eating too little. But anyway, this Ramchandra Puri was like really feed them all and then criticize them. It was like, so he didn't get the mercy of Madhavendra Puri, but Ishvara Puri did, and he became the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. So anyways, this is this particular verse, Ayadina Deyadana He. So he was chanting this at the end of his life, Madhavendra Puri. And you see, there's two examples. One is the service to the spiritual master. What is the result? That's Ishvara Puri. Two is offending and not obeying the instructions. That's the result, Ramchandra. So, Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj says that as the diamond Kaustubha jewel is the most precious among the available jewels, this shloka is the Rasa Kavya, the best verse in the entire treasury of Rasa poetry. Actually, this verse was spoken by Srimati Radharani herself. It was Radharani's pathetic cry to Shyamasundar, who had gone to Mathura, leaving her alone, desperate in Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani's mercy brought the same verse from the mouth of Madhavendra Puri. Reciting even a few words of the shloka would tear open the door of Mahaprabhu's ecstatic love, making him swoon in ecstasy, fallen unconscious. Feeling intense separation from Krishna, Madhavendra Puri constantly chanted this verse when departing this world. So he was just constantly chanting this verse. Madhavendra Puri. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj says that with this verse, Madhavendra Puri teaches devotees how to achieve Krishna Prem by cultivating intense feelings of separation from Krishna. Gaudiya Vaishnavas accept that this verse expresses the essence of the mood of separation. The Gaudiya Sampradaya teaches that worship of Radha and Krishna separation represents the highest level of devotional service. At this stage of realization, the devotee feels completely vacant in the world in the absence of Krishna. A moment without Madhava feels like a millennium. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always swam in the ocean of Divyon Mahabhav, the mad and ecstatic motions shown by Sri Mati Radharani in the Brahmar Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the Brahmar Gita, the song of the bee. So there's a bee. Krishna, Uddhava comes to Vrindavan. He's giving a message to the gopis for Krishna, coming from Dwarka. And Srimati Radharani's there, and Uddhava, this letter saying, Krishna's saying this letter, oh, don't worry, I'll be back eventually, and also, even if I'm not back, you could just meditate me, I'm in the heart of everyone, and, like he was giving some type of instructions for yogis or something. But the gopis weren't happy with that. And they wanted Krishna personally. Even when Srimati Radharani and the gopis met Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in this solar eclipse time, Srimati Radharani saw Krishna in his princely attire with all the soldiers and horses and this and that, and she was saying, I just want to see you back in Vrindavan on the bank of the Yamuna and the moon, nice moonshine shining there, you're playing your flute with your peacock feather and so on. So similarly with this Brahmar, they weren't satisfied. And then in this particular pastime, there's a bee that comes. And she starts talking to the bee in this maddened state of ecstasy, talking to the bee. And she starts chastising the bee. Oh, I know Krishna sent you. And anyways, it's in the Krishna book. You could read it. So this is a separation. In this verse, Sri Madhavendra Puri discloses similar emotions. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas conclude that the monsoon shower of ecstatic love exhibited by Lord Gauranga during his manifest pastimes began with Madhavendra Puri. And then came through Ishwar Puri, who played the role of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. Madhavendra Puri's samadhi is in Remuna, Orissa, near the temple of Chur Gopinath. All right, so now we could read this next one. It's a short. It's Parameshvari. What is it? Appearance. It's the appearance. Okay. This is Parameshvari, or Parameshvara. Parameshwar Das was completely, so this is short, so if you don't listen very carefully, you'll just very short. Parameshwar Das was completely surrendered to the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. He was the Lord's constant companion. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj says that anyone who remembers his name, Parameshwar Das, will easily attain love for Krishna. Parameshwar Das also humbly served Sri Janava Mata Devi. He accompanied the deity of Radharani that Janava Devi sent to Vrindavan for Govindaji. In Krishna Leela, Parameshwar Das is one of the Dwadasa Gopals named Arjun. His samadhi is in the 64 samadhis area. So he was completely surrendered to the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. He was the Lord's constant companion. Anyone who remembers his name will easily attain love for Krishna. He humbly served Janavi Devi, and he accompanied the deity of Radharani that Janavi Devi sent to Vrindavan for Govindaji. These are some of the wonderful things he did. And sometimes we think I have to be a world traveler, preacher, I have to do this, I have to distribute volleys and millions and billions of books, right? But there's so many of these acharyas and devotees, so many of them, their glories are very, in some ways simple. And for materialists, this is not, much of the glories of the devotees are not glories at all. But for devotees who understand Krishna consciousness, it is glorious. Like some of the devotees say, he was a brahmachari his whole life. And he served Radha Krishna deities his whole life. And he wrote, one or two books glorifying Krishna. And he was very humble, and he served, and a few other glories, and that's what he did. And that's glorious. So, yeah. Parameshwar Das. So another one is Srinivas Acharya. So, read about him. After witnessing Lord Gauranga's sannyas ceremony at Katwa, Chaitanya Das and his pregnant wife visited Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. This is what Lord Chaitanya said. Soon your wife will give birth to a son named Srinivas. And through Srinivas, all the bhakti shastras of Rupa and Sanatana will be distributed. When his father left this world, Srinivas visited the remaining associates of Lord Chaitanya in Katwa, Navadvip, Jagannath Puri. They blessed Srinivas and gave him valuable instructions for spiritual advancement. Seeing his absorption in Gauranga Prem, they knew he was an embodiment of Gaura Shakti, the energy of Lord Chaitanya. He came to Vrindavan, toured the 12 forests, and took Diksha from Gopala Bhatta Goswami. Sri Jiva Goswami taught him the complete philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. The best Bhakti Shastri teacher, Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada said he's the greatest philosopher. Acknowledging his vast learning, Sri Jiva gave Srinivas the title Acharya. Accepting Sri Jiva's order, Srinivas and his two friends, Shamananda Prabhu and Narottam Das Thakur, pioneered the first transcendental book distribution party. They took a bullock cart of the Goswami's devotional writings from Vrindavan and passed them out all over Bengal and Orissa. Apparently they had to write them out because there's no big printing press. Srinivasacharya initiated many disciples. Ramchandra Kaviraj and others wrote songs full of bhakti, Shad Goswami Ashtakam, and introduced a special kirtan style. When leading kirtan, he would sometimes lose his voice from chanting so long. Besides his external activities of preaching and writing, Srinivasacharya practiced extensive Raganuga bhajan. About this, Raganuga bhajan and entering the higher levels of devotional service, we're not against it. I mean, it's there within our books, within Chaitanya Charitamrita and other books. We're not against it. But as Srila Prabhupada said many times, noting that some of his disciples would go off to Radhakund to do this, he would say, we're not against it, but you have to first follow the beginning instructions, vacho vega manaso, controlling the senses, getting free from the anarthas. Because there's no question of raganuga and higher levels of devotional service if we're not free from the anarthas. We have to be free from the unwanted things within the heart. Self, lust, anger, greed, all these different things. So if one is still bound by those to whatever degree, then how can there be some higher levels of devotional service? But maybe the higher levels of devotion, as Tirthamars one time said, devotees, they wear the shirts, which the sentiment's good and it's fine, right? I lost my heart in Vrindavan, and it has the heart, I lost my heart in Vrindavan. And then Tirthamars one time said, oh yeah, why don't you lose your heart in washing the pots, means we're not, that's the goal, right? To enter Vrindavan, to be in that conscious. And we're not obviously against that. We're moving, that's what we want. But we have to cleanse the heart first of the anarthas. Just like holding grudges. I mean, if we're angry, we're bitter, we're with this devotee or whoever it may be, then it's something that needs to be overcome. It's an artha, it's an unwanted thing. Why? Because Vaishnavas forgive. They're full of forgiveness. Brahman is full of forgiveness. Vaishnava is full of forgiveness. And Prahlad Maharaj is the greatest example. I mean, not only his father was like abusive and yelling at him and beating him or something like that, but his father was trying to kill him in so many ways. And still, when Narasimhadev said, what do you want from me? What benedictions? And Prahlad Maharaj said, please deliver my father. I mean, some people, they'd say, let my father go to hell, at least for some time, right? Maybe some people would say eternally. I mean, some people say God sends the living entities to hell for eternity. That's really a strange idea. But some people would say, well, at least let my father suffer, right? At least let him have 7 births of suffering, and then, okay, then maybe he could, then maybe save my father. But he said, no, save my father. Amazing, actually. Absolutely amazing. So we're supposed to be followers of Prahlad Maharaj, so we can't be holding things in our heart. And whatever we are holding, then we can't be thinking, okay, let's higher levels of devotional service. First things first. First we've got to clear all that stuff, and then. So anyways, but Srinivasacharya, this is what he was doing, and we'll see it was it was really amazing, because I've read this before, because somehow or other a lot of times I get this day, but Raganuga Bhajan is a spontaneous internal worship of Radha and Krishna based on the mood and sentiments of the eternal residents of Sri Vrindavana Dham, such as the gopis. While doing Manasi Seva, service within one's mind and meant to the conceived spiritual form, he would often bring tangible paraphernalia from these meditations back with him upon returning to external consciousness. Once Srinivas sat Lord Gauranga on a jeweled throne within his mind. Then he worshipped the Lord with the golden-handled chamara whisk and a 5-flower garland. Pleased with his service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered the garland back to Srinivas, who then immediately awoke and lost the meditation. A surprised Srinivas found the sweetest flower garland he ever smelled hanging around his neck when he returned to external consciousness. Another time, Srinivas was in his Siddha Sarup, this eternal form, perfected form, as Mani Manjari watching Srimati Radharani, Sri Krishna and the gopis in holy Leela. It's the most pure Leela. And anyway, sometimes people, they have holy around, like in different places. And even the karmis, as we may call them, or the materialists, they also have this holy. I don't know if they actually call it holy, but I've seen some advertisement throwing this. And it's interesting because these are the most pure pastimes, and then they, in this material world, they just turn into some strange boy and girl kind of mundane, frivolous, whimsical thing. It's interesting. So, but he was watching this, joyfully throwing colored powders and dyes on each other. The gopis told Mani Manjari to supply colors to Srimati Radharani and side with them with their war against Krishna. The earth shook from their furious battle. Srinivas's meditation abruptly broke. His body was completely covered from head to toe with fragrant and exotic rainbow-colored powders imported from the spiritual world. So, and his samadhi's in the Dira Samira Samadhi's area, Vrindavan. So, it's amazing. He woke up from the meditation, and it was, his whole body was in these holy colors. So, and it's also the appearance of Radha Raman, who's Gopala Bhatta Goswami's deity. Would you like to say something about that, Vapati?
Yeah, once, some years ago, like 7-8 years ago, I was there actually on that day, particular day in Vrindavan. They have a lot of wonderful. That's the day Gopala Bhatta Goswami had Shalagram and used to worship it. And then he had a desire to dress him and have flutes and turban and all that. So he had a desire, and then later Krishna appeared and as the deity, self-manifested deity, and you can still see his little teeth are visible, and back of the Shalagram half back, that it's still visible. And then Radharani, they have the jewelry box and ornaments for hoping Radharani will come, so they still have that. And the deity is not that very big. You can go very close to the deity, have quick darshan, I mean very front. And on this particular day, they have, whole day they have festivals like Kirtan, and people come and they have Abhishek, they bring the deities literally front, and they have wonderful prasads and sweets. And actually, even Prabhupada had a lot of connection with the Goswamis of Radha Raman. And in fact, like 10-15 years ago, one of their Acharyas came to San Diego. He was visiting different ISKCON temples. So they even came to San Diego and gave some classes and pastimes. So Radha Raman, it's a lot of wonderful pastimes out there.
Yeah, he's about like this big.
Yeah, very small,
very
but
small.
Yeah.
Beautiful deity.
Yeah, actually, in fact, every day you can watch it. I get a lot of their pictures every day. If you're connected with them, you can every day get all their darshan 3 times a day, and you can watch online also.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have beautiful kirtans there. These devotees who go there, they're like really expert musicians with the harmonium And they also have a flute performance for Radha Raman every night. One devotee goes there and plays the flute for Radha Raman. And yeah, when I was there, there's really, great, with the harmonium and mridanga. There's some recordings actually of that on SoundCloud. You look up Radha Raman Temple, there's a bunch of recordings. Of course, they're chanting some songs. It seems like it's Hindi or, I don't know, maybe Bengali. Yeah, probably Hindi. But they also chant Hare Krishna. So, yeah, it's really nice. And if you go there, or when you go there, if you go up to the altar and you leave a donation, means some rupees, which is, and as a general principle, it's actually good to do that because helps support the temple and maintenance of the temple and maintenance of the deity and devotees. I mean, of course, maybe someone just really doesn't have the money. They're like really don't have the money. But even then, you give, I don't know, some coins or something. But generally, devotees have a little extra something. So to give to these temples and whatever, some rupees. And then you give the rupees and they'll give you a nice little kheer, little prasadam pot, clay pot. It's mini. So, yeah. And maybe if you give more rupees, they might give you a little few of them or some extra, maybe some ladus or something. I think I was there and they gave some ladus. So, yeah. So you could get Radha Raman's prasadam. And, yeah, also, yeah, and like Ramapati was saying, Gopala Bhatta Goswami, he was desiring to dress his deity, but he couldn't dress because it was a shila. Shila means stone. There's no, right? So then he was thinking, oh, I'm such a rascal, and why am I should just be satisfied with my shila. And then he woke up the next morning and the shila transformed into Radha Raman. So, yeah. Special deity. And a lot of the deities, they moved to Jaipur. Devotees moved them because of Muslim invasions. The Muslims would attack temples, break deities, so they moved the deities to Jaipur. But this Radha Raman was not moved because he's so small. It's like this small. So I guess they hit him somehow. So, but other deities that were much bigger, they were moved. So, yeah. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Or comments? Joseph?
Thank you. At the beginning of the class, you mentioned some appearances. How many were there appearances today? How many?
Prakash, you want to read that again? In the mic?
So we have 3 appearance days, and 1 disappearance. The appearance was Sri Madhavendra Puri, Sri Srinivas Acharya, and Sri Radharaman Devaji. So the deity. And the disappearance was Sri Parameshwari Dasa Thakura.
And the second question is, how many millions of years ago were they here, or were these recent incarnations?
These were all Madhavendra Puri, Srinivasacharya, and Parameshwar Das. These were all associates of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, 500 years ago, around 500 years. Not precisely 500, but around
Close
500
enough.
years.
Okay.
Rounding. So, and then Radha Raman was also, about 500 years ago, right?
One more question?
Yes.
Tonight's the full moon and it's an eclipse. Is there any correlation with them appearing on...
You should stay in your apartment all day then. I'm just joking.
Oh, no, I'll be out chanting tonight at midnight when it actually occurs.
All right.
In the parking lot. It's around midnight. Yeah, it'll be an eclipse. The moon will turn red. So anyway, the question was, is there any correlation with these appearances and them, or is it just another full moon?
I don't think there's any correlation. No. What is it today? Is it full moon? Yeah, full moon. Purnima and eclipse.
During the eclipse, we don't go out, and because it's considered impure. I mean, you're supposed to take bath after that. I mean, traditionally in India, people take holy bath and all that. You chant more rounds, japa, stay more indoor during the eclipse. Yeah.
Also on Purnima, we dress the deities. You see they're in silver and white. A Sunday means it could be any color. Sunday's like any color. But because it's a Purnima, we're dressing in white today, silver. And also on Kadashi, many devotees know this, but it's red, white, silver. And then other days, there's other colors. Like Monday's red, Tuesday's blue, Wednesday's what? Yellow. Thursday's green. Friday is... What's Friday? Huh? Saturday is black. Friday is not sure. Oh, purple? Okay. Anyways, so different days have different colors. So yeah, for the deity worship. All right, any other yes.
So describing how a mother, when she sees the shoe of a child, it reminds her of the child, it's not just another shoe. And we can practice, like when we see a tree, this is Krishna's tree, or this is Krishna's energy, and such. What I find is it's still very intellectual and theoretical. It's not like real.
Yeah.
And recently we're describing even Rukmani, just by hearing about Krishna, she became attracted to Krishna.
Yeah.
It seems very amazing that just by, Prabhupada says that just by hearing you can realize, but it seems to remain very intellectual. Like unless we have some reciprocation, and it doesn't, that this is Krishna and this is Krishna's energy. Like a mother, she has reciprocations with the child. I can see how that is real for her. But how does this become real?
All right. Well, one thing is that we have to hear. That's the process. The process is Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhyakavanoi Shavanada Shuddha Chitta Koridoy, that the eternal love for Krishna is established in the hearts of all living entities. And by hearing and chanting about Krishna, this will awaken. So it does, that is the process. It will awaken. But we have to hear and chant about Krishna. Yeah, and the more we do that, the closer we'll get, or the more that will awaken. But we have to also do that avoiding the offenses. So there's 10 offenses to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, right? So we have to know what those offenses are and try to avoid them. Of course, there's Seva Aparad, there's Vaisnava Aparad, there's Jiva Aparad, there's Nam Aparad, there's a lot of offenses to avoid. And those offenses could hamper our advancement. So the more we could try to get free of those offenses, the more we could make more progress. Yeah, so that's one thing. And sometimes people may think, oh, well, I don't know if I'm really making any advancement. Like, I can't really tell. And as one devotee was brought up in a talk, he said that there was a man, he was sick one time. He was sick, and he'd vomit everything he would eat. So you can't really, be healthy like that, because you need food to nourish the body. So then this Ayurvedic doctor said, just feed him, vegans wouldn't like this, but just feed him ghee. Just feed him a little ghee every day. And then the caretaker said, yeah, but he's vomiting. I mean, what's the point? He's not holding anything. What's the point? He said, no, that's okay. Just feed him ghee every day, a little bit. And then, he started doing that. And yeah, he still wasn't holding everything, all the ghee, but then eventually he started getting better. And the idea was that because a lot of it he couldn't hold, but some of it would stick. Some of the ghee would be, and it would nourish the body. So similarly, when we're hearing and chanting about Krishna, we're not just trying to like, you know, they have that saying, right? In one ear, out the other ear, or in the old mundane Charlie Brown, sorry for using this example, but cartoon, at least it's innocent. There's a lot, anyways, but like when the teacher was making announcements on the speaker, you know how they do in school, like letting the students out or whatever. And in the show, it was wah 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 wah. Like it was, the person was saying something like, "Okay, tomorrow we're gonna have a field trip. We're gonna go here and there, and thank you everybody for participating in class. And this Friday we're actually gonna have off." And but the children were just hearing wah 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 wah, so they weren't really hearing it. So the idea is that when we're chanting our rounds, when we're hearing the Bhagavatam, when we're discussing Krishna Katha, we want to hear what we're discussing, and we just don't want it to we want it to stay in our consciousness, and that's how actually we become Krishna conscious. As all this information will enter and will sit within our consciousness. That's what we want. And in terms of it being just an intellectual thing, yeah, I mean, it could be an intellectual thing, but that just means that the full-on attraction for Krishna hasn't manifested yet. And we also have to be careful because we don't want it to just be an intellectual thing. Lord Chaitanya's movement is combination, right? They say heart and head, right? Combination. We use our intellect, we try to understand things, but it's also involving emotions. Like Mayavadis, they're just sitting there reading Vedanta and practicing severe austerities. But we read Bhagavatam and other books, but we also have the side of serving. We serve Krishna. So also just to serve. I mean, like for example, within Vedic culture, they have this arranged marriages. And it's not that the husband and wife, they immediately necessarily feel attraction for each other, but I mean, how much attraction can you feel for someone if you've only met them, once or twice? Whether it's a friend or whether they're married, or you can't really feel much. But over time, spending time together, working together, serving together, then they develop some attraction. So similarly with service, we have to do some type of service. We have to cook for Krishna. We have to distribute books. We have to do this. We have to do that. We have to do things. And we may not be feeling the emotion behind it. It may seem mechanical. But over time, we're hoping that we start to feel something. Not that it's just like, okay, I'm waving this incense before Radha Giridhari, but I'm not feeling anything. We should be feeling something. And that will happen over time. It should happen. And yeah, but we have to be careful because we don't want it just to be an intellectual thing. Like this Tirtha Maharaj also was given a class here one time, and I'm just thinking about because for some reason this example's coming to my mind, but or this time is coming to my mind. But he was given a class, sitting on this seat, and there was a devotee here, brahmachari, Carlos. I said his name, and Tirtha Maharaj said, I see that shimmer in your eye, because he was, you could say, enjoying the intellectual aspect of the class. Now that's okay. That's fine. I mean, Brahmins, you could say, or people, whatever, thinkers, or that's fine. They like to intellectually think about things, but they have to be careful because it could be really, nectarian, right? All the logic and arguments and reason, let's debate with the atheists and all this type of stuff. That's all good. That's all necessary. We're into that. We need people to do that, right? Or I'm thinking about Jayadvaita Swami now. He's a very intelligent person, clearly. Logical, intelligent, great presentation of Krishna consciousness, logical presentation of Krishna consciousness. But it's not just that. He has other aspects to his life. For example, he has his Govardhan-shilas, right, Krishna Balaram, and he's collecting flowers, offering incense. So he's not just like, relishing the gyan of Krishna consciousness, but there's the side of service to Krishna, the emotional side. And also if you see when he's relating to devotees, it's not that he's just he won't talk to you unless you're some big jnani or something, unless you could keep some super big intellectual conversation with him. He has interest in helping devotees, and you could say, which sometimes could just be kind of supporting them emotionally or trying to answer their questions or something like that. So both have to be there. Or you see Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was the best. I mean, he convinced all of these people to surrender to Krishna. He actually said about the Americans and Europeans, he said, I had to shed tons of blood just to convince these people. So many questions, so many doubts, but Prabhupada convinced them. Scientists and thinkers and so on. So he convinced them, but you see Srila Prabhupada, he's cooking for the deities, teaching devotees how to, offering incense to the deities and serving Krishna, and it's not just that Prabhupada was intellectual. So both have to be there. So we have to work on that. All right, I think that exhausts. We have one question pending.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams, may I?
Yes.
Prabhu, the famous devotee runs away from fame and adoration. But
yes.
Fame and adoration can be used in the service of the Lord. So
yes.
How would you accommodate this apparent contradiction?
All right, well, there's devotees set different examples, just like Ramananda Roy. He was a householder, but he was detached. He was a great devotee. He was amazing. And I mean, to say the inconceivably amazing pure devotee. But he was a householder. He was, right, engaged. But then you have Rupa and Sanatana and all these Goswamis who were detached. I mean, Ramananda Roy was also detached. No one could, I mean, there's so many examples of Ramananda Roy being inconceivably detached. But Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami were also detached, but they were detached in a different way. They're living out, right, a different tree every night in Vrindavan. So devotees give different examples, and that's good for us, because we can't just have one example. We need many examples, because there's many different types of devotees, and not everybody's going to follow a particular example. So that's there. So you have the example of Madhavendra Puri running away from fame. That's a great example. He's setting an example that this is something that is allowed, this is something that is authentic, this is something that can be done. And internally, a devotee should always be running away from fame. It means fame and Of course, Madhavendra Puri wasn't going to become proud, but he didn't like it. He wanted to just remain in the background. So this is a good example. Whereas you see some devotees, they may accept that fame and adoration for Krishna's service. Just like they say Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Devotees would say that whenever there was like a television, like a news reporter or something like that, he would immediately go. And devotees were kind of wondering, like, why is Maharaj so eager to like get behind the camera, like start answering questions? Because it was almost like a boy, running towards candy or something. Like, all right, I'm going. Here we go. But then they asked him. They said, Maharaj, why are you so eager? And he said, well, I want to use these different mediums to preach about Krishna consciousness. It's not that, I'm going to be on TV or something. He said, I want to preach about Krishna consciousness. So we use that fame for that. So in these acharyas, they have different ways of operating. And both ways are completely fine and authentic. Like, for example, in the Gaudiya Math, there was one devotee, acharya, means he had many disciples, and we should have turned that off in the beginning of the class. I forgot to ask them. I've been asking them the last 5 days I've been giving class to turn that off before the class, but I forgot. Anyways, so this acharya, he had many disciples. And generally acharyas in the Gaudiya Math, when they're the acharya, they put a picture, or they don't put, but it's accepted that a picture of them will be on the altar. But in this particular case, this acharya, he said, no picture of me on the altar. Who am I? I'm although I'm a sannyasi, I don't want to be on the altar. All the brahmacharis and the congregation would treat him as an acharya, but he didn't want to accept that role. Same with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, actually. He said that he didn't want any pictures of himself in the different householders' homes. He said, I'd get proud. So in other words, it's up to the acharya, it's up to the guru how much worship or adoration they want to accept, actually, because they're persons and they have, individuality. So it's actually up to them. Some acharyas accept a lot, some accept less. So, yeah. That's what I would say.
But the goal is to little or big fame. Let's use it for Krishna's pleasure.
Yes. Everything.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai. All right. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.